Alright, how's it going everyone? Welcome to another Master Mentorship video, and let's go ahead and take a look at some of these games. So we are going to get started here with a game that Cullen sent me. Looks like you have the black pieces here, so let's flip this around, and we will get started. Alright, so we get, okay, interesting, Bishop f5 against the early London system. You can probably play that way. Yeah, I see no problem with it. I'm curious how common that is. Yeah, okay, people play it. I don't know too much about that system, but it makes sense, just getting the bishop out before you play e6. So let's take a look. I wonder if white can play like c4 here now. That might be an idea, but let's see. So e3, at f6. Okay, and you're waiting to see if they're going to go for the London or the Queen's Gambit. I would already consider this a London with the early bishop f4. Like I said, they could play c4. I'm trying to think how I would even categorize that. I guess that's some form of a Queen's Gambit. I'm just not too familiar with the bishop being out so early, but let's take a look. I guess you have to watch out for queen b3 in some cases. That's the main thing. But okay, they just trade off the bishop, and okay, bishop g6, I don't mind it. Makes sense. I mean, if they take, you open up the file for the rook, like you said. Takes, e6 is good. Bishop e7 is good. You said you prefer the bishop on d6. I probably agree, but I think this is okay too. Just trying to keep pieces on the board and not go for some, mass exchanges where all the bishops come off. c3, knight h5. I think I prefer just developing here, although, okay, this does force the bishop off the board, so it makes sense too. And it seems like white's not interested in bishop g3 here, of course, because then if you take, of course, the rook would be hanging here. If they take with the h-pawn, they have to wreck the pawns. Maybe in light of that, it does make more sense. I guess white doesn't have a great response here. So they end up allowing you to take on f4. Okay. Although sometimes in the London, white doesn't mind this because white argues they get this great grip on the e5 square. But I think black's certainly fine here. Okay, knight d7 makes sense, trying to exchange off the knight. They reinforce it. And you go for takes in g5. Oh, I see. They take with the f-pawn. Yeah, I thought they were going to take with the knight and just maintain this this kind of pseudo-outpost here. It's not strictly an outpost because you have this f-pawn, but it's very hard to ever play f6. But white decides to straighten out their pawns right away. And now we get this advanced French pawn structure. Again, that's why I harp on these pawn structures in Module 3. Even though this was a queen's pawn opening, it's nothing even close to a French defense. We see how often these pawn structures pop up. But okay, you go ahead and play g5 here, trying to expand and kick this knight away. Let me see your comment here. Yeah, you disagree with the pawn capture? Yeah, I probably agree. Yeah, the knight would have been more annoying, like you said. And looks like you're trying to expand there on the king side. Wow, and white plays g4 in response. I definitely feel like that's not great. Just permanently turning h2 into a backwards pawn on this file and really exposing the king. I mean, we have another g-pawn, right? White doesn't. And now you play f5. Interesting. So let me see. You said if he takes on passant, you're happy to fix your pawn structure. Yeah, feels a little bit loose here, but maybe we're just going to castle long. I wonder if white can really put enough pressure on our e-pawn that we're concerned about it. Maybe not, because this knight is just so well restricted. Although white could try to play h4 here, possibly even. But this is probably okay for you, even if it's a bit unconventional. And I guess if they don't take on passant, let me see what you said you were going to do there. If he captures with the g-pawn, you can push g4 first. Aha, okay. Makes sense. I guess the knight doesn't really have a great square. Now, does white have some trick here with, like, f6? We have to actually calculate some stuff. And I'm also just a bit worried for your king in general, if white just sacks a piece. Like, what if white just takes and goes for this? They're down a piece, but I'm a little bit nervous here. You'd have to calculate this, of course. There's a lot to kind of foresee here when you start looking for in-between moves. But in principle, the idea makes sense. I like how you think. Just definitely make sure you calculate very precisely when you're looking for in-between moves, especially. But okay, f5, white doesn't really address it at all. They just play queen c2. So you take and allow queen g6. We could also just castle here. I think castling short is surprisingly interesting. Not sure if it's best, but it is a move I would consider. Just defending the pawn, threatening f takes g4, probably recapturing with the rook if they take the pawn. Although then I don't really like these isolated doubled pawns. And you're probably right that with only a knight on the board and only major pieces besides that, we can probably get away with just taking this pawn and putting the king on d7. We have tripled pawns, but white really doesn't have a great way of winning any of them, at least not yet. So yeah, the knight's kicked away. The knight's a pretty bad piece. We defend all our pawns, possibly threatening queen f5, I'm guessing is the idea, to kind of straighten out those pawns just a little bit. Castle long. Okay, they're just going to give us f2. Yeah, and like you mentioned, there is that question of if we can take that pawn. I'd be a little bit nervous too, just because we're giving white control of the f-file. I feel like queen f5 is kind of the more reserved move, just forcing queens off the board and connecting your pawns a little bit. But I don't mind it if it works. I can't see any immediate problem white can pose to us, and now we're up 2 pawns. I guess you could argue they can take g7, but of course trading off the f-pawn for one of our triple g pawns, not the end of the world there for black. So let's see, knight b3, b6. Okay, yeah, like you said, not sure if it's necessary, but I don't mind it just because this knight's such a bad piece. Why not keep it bad? And I don't see anything white can really do in the meantime. If all they have is major pieces, they can't get to the king. They have to have this knight involved somehow, and we're really keeping it at bay here. And yeah, you said the computer tells you to trade queens. Yeah, I kind of agree. Like I was saying, queen f5 makes sense. We're up a couple pawns. Why not try to get the queens off the board? I just wonder if we're going to have time to do that next turn. I know they're going to play rook f1. Okay, they don't play rook f1. So I guess let's see how that goes. Okay, rook h6, you want to trade off one of your g-pawns to double rooks on the h-file. Makes sense. I just really value simplicity once we have a winning material advantage. We're up 2 pawns now. That's plenty to win, even with the triple pawns, I think. Maybe they could start going after these pawns in the endgame, but h2 is already so weak. So I feel like the endgame has to be winning for us, so I would probably play queen f5. But let's see how this goes. Okay, we double on the h-file. Takes... in g3, huh? And you said you missed that that d takes e6 was coming, and we can't take back there on e6, because why exactly? b5 is probably really strong. Yeah, this looks really scary for the king. Yeah, so first of all, I really like your creativity and how you always look for these in-between moves. This in-between g3 before recapturing, all this stuff. The in-between moves earlier you were calculating, that's really good. Just really be careful about your calculation at those moments because it's very, very easy to go wrong, just missing one little detail. That's definitely something to work on, but I can tell just from seeing this game, your very thorough annotations, how you played in your game against me, you're doing a lot of stuff right, and you're definitely on your way to massive rating games. You're definitely way stronger than 1200. I think once you shore up some of these calculation things, once you start working on developing a comprehensive opening repertoire, you're definitely way on your way up, and I look forward to seeing how much progress you can make. But then let's just take a look at how this game ended. So, okay, g3, they take on e6. We have to come back to d8. That's not great. And then, okay, they just give us a piece. Yeah, I'm trying to see what white's idea was. I guess if we take, they want to open up the file. And, okay, if we play king e8, I guess there's rook d7 ideas. That's kind of scary. But like you said, you don't have to accept this knight sacrifice. I guess knight b7 is one check, but that looks like it's all it is as long as we don't open up any of these rooks into the game. We could probably just play king e8 or something. And yeah, meanwhile, we can maybe take on h2, maybe play g2. But sadly, it looks like white resigned before we got to figure out what would have happened there. But yeah, very good game overall. Just watch the calculation when you're looking for in-between moves, and keep it up. Looking forward to seeing more games. All right, next up here, we have a game from Mike B. So let's take a look. Looks like you've got the white pieces, I believe, based on your comment. We got a nice member versus member game. Always love to see that. Okay, e4, c6, knight f3, d5, d3. Okay, you're unfamiliar with what to do against the c6 opening. It seems to be building control for the center. Yeah, I mean, black's going to grab the center. That's their whole point. They want to play d5, but you can grab the center too. I disagree with playing this way because black has many good options here. What if black just takes... and trades queens, right? And now, are we really happy to play this with our king on d1, no queens on the board? Doesn't seem that great to me. If you'd like, you can go ahead and search for this video on YouTube, Caro-Kann Chess Pathways. Just type that in, and I'll totally break down for you all the different options here for both sides in this opening, e4, c6. Like I talk about in Module 4, at this level, I don't think opening preparation is something to spend a ton of time on. But definitely after each game, try to learn one new thing about the opening of that game. That's the big thing to be doing at this level. So, okay, you played this opening, you didn't know what to do, that's fine. Just make sure that next time you face it, you're ready. So check out that video. Just as one general principle, if black doesn't grab the center on move 1, you can just take it. You can just play d4 and grab the full center. You don't have to play, with knight f3 and d3. But let's see the game. So black did not go for this with taking and trading queens. They played bishop g4. You played bishop e2. Okay, they could still take and trade queens, but I don't think white's worse. It's just not really a path to an opening advantage, but like I said, that's okay. And you also had some really good kind of general questions about this game that I saw in your email, so let me go ahead and read through some of these now so I can kind of focus on them throughout the game. You said that you felt like you were playing kind of defensive throughout the game, so we can take a look at that, but certainly the opening approach feels pretty defensive, and you could have grabbed the full center. You also said you felt kind of rushed in your calculation process. Yeah, I think that's to be expected, even in a 45-45 game. If you think about it, if an average chess game takes 40 to 50 moves, you only get a little more than 1 minute per move in a 45-45 game to really assess all the checks, captures, and threats, come up with your plan, come up with your candidate moves, blunder check them. So that's okay. If you're feeling rushed in 45-45, first of all, that's kind of a good thing, because it means you're trying to take your time, you're trying to go through the thought process every turn. That's good. You could practice that more in daily games with unlimited time. You can practice in tactics trainers with unlimited time. It also becomes kind of a matter of budgeting your time in these live games for critical moments and not spending too much in the non-critical positions where there's many playable moves. But I wouldn't feel bad about being rushed. That means you're trying to take your time, and it's going to come with time and pattern recognition, which you're going to build up through tactics trainers as your calculation gets quicker over time. And then you also said you felt more pressure when playing lower-rated players. I definitely do too. I mean, I think that's a thing for everyone. Definitely in a tournament, when I'm paired against a grandmaster, I'm kind of happy. I think, okay, the worst that happens is I lose, and that's just kind of expected. But when I'm paired against some, 1900 player who I think might be underrated, then it's like, oh no, if I lose this game, there goes 15 rating points. But I wouldn't put too much credence into like chess.com standard ratings. A lot of people don't play too much long time control chess online, so a lot of these ratings aren't even too accurate. I know my live chess standard rating on chess.com is I think it's 1700 or something. So there's a lot of people who are way underrated, way overrated in their chess.com ratings. I wouldn't give too much credit to that. But I know what you mean about feeling pressure. You just have to kind of put it aside and play the best move every turn to the best of your ability, no matter who you're paired against. So I hope that helps, both you and everyone listening to this. But let's go ahead and take a look. So, okay, this is all okay. So your bishop already has a good diagonal. I don't think you need another one. But okay, I don't hate b3. So let's see, bishop e7, bishop e2. Okay, not sure what you mean about building up pressure on your king side with his deep bishop. And you said pawn d4 and then pawn e5. I'm not sure if you're talking about black playing that or if you're talking about yourself playing something like that. I guess both players could have that idea. I don't sense any pressure on your king side though. What's black gonna do? They have two pieces over there, right? Your king seems pretty safe to me. Knight d2, castle long. Okay, so now we have opposite side castling. That should kind of set off kind of alarm bells in your head that it's time to start thinking a bit more aggressively, right? Because now black can freely launch the pawns. They have no king here to worry about, but you can too, right? You can play very aggressively here on the queen side because your king's not over there. So let's see. He's trying to build on your king side. Okay. His candidate moves pawn to e5. Knight takes pawn. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I don't see any knight takes pawn. Okay. Let's just see what happens. So okay, you play d4. You grab some more space in the center. And now he plays bishop takes f3. And it looks like this wins material, doesn't it, actually? Because d4 is loose, e4 is loose if you take with the knight. So I'm trying to read how you're going about your checks, captures, threats here. This is really hard to read, by the way. This is pawn e5, bishop takes bishop, knight takes bishop. There's pawn e5 again. I'm not sure if these are two different lines or what the situation is. It would help if you gave them as variations. Just to show you how to do that, if you just make some move here and say, okay, I was considering pawn to e5, see, it shows up as a little variation here, and you can actually put in your commons of what you were calculating. Or just using standard chess notation, that would help too. But okay, let's see. So bishop takes f3. So I guess you were considering pawn to e5. I think that doesn't work, though, because they would take here with the bishop, right? And you just lose a piece. So you really sadly have no way to hang on to all your material here because d4 and e4 are both in trouble. So maybe that means d4 wasn't safe. Now, when you play d4, you don't give this list of all the calculation you were doing. It was only the next turn, but I think it might be too late then because I think this pawn and this pawn are already too weak. So let's see. Okay, they win a pawn. We come back. c5. Okay. c3, knight h6. You were surprised by that. You thought he would play knight e5. I guess he could, but then don't we just play queen c2 with kind of a double attack here on e4 and the knight? Just because there's a pin doesn't mean you have to use it right away. I think white has some options there. Maybe there's stuff black could consider there, but I don't think knight d3 works right away. So let's take a look. Knight h6, f3, e3. Well, this pawn looks like it could be weak, but I guess black has ideas to try to defend it with like knight f5. Let me see here. f3. Try black. Pawn takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn. If he doesn't move queen, bishop takes b7. Wins the queen. Okay, good, good. But what if he does move the queen? You still have to make sure that your moves are going to be effective if your opponent doesn't blunder, but I think it is. I think it's nice to have this bishop on the long diagonal. Just try to make sure your calculation's not so linear. Chess calculation usually has a lot more branches than that, but it's very good that you saw that, of course, the discovered attack winning the queen. So, okay, e3. Okay, trying to go after that weak pawn. I like it. C takes d4. Knight takes d4. Okay, I thought you were going to play just pawn takes d4 to open up this c file to go after the king and to keep this knight eyeing the weak pawn. So here, like, you don't give alternatives or check captures threats or any candidate moves. Did you consider both options? Because definitely pawn takes, knight takes, and queen takes should all be candidate moves. I'd be curious to see, like, how you thought about the differences there and how you decided on knight takes. But okay, knight takes, knight f5, takes, and f4. Okay, trying to prevent f4. Definitely makes sense. Plus, you get f3 for the bishop. Okay, g5, rook f3. Realized it was a terrible move. Yeah, I guess it just kind of runs into knight e5, doesn't it? Hitting the queen and the rook. So very good that you realized that. So one thing to keep in mind, I don't know if you're doing this based on the annotations, the whole check, capture, and threat thing, that's good to do for looking for your moves. It's even more important to do after you finalize what move you're going to make. So once you decide that you're going to play rook f3, you have to look for all your opponent's checks, captures, and threats in that position after playing rook f3, but you have to do it before you play it on the board, right? It's after you decide on the move, but before you actually physically play it on the board. It's kind of a blunder check. That's the most important time to look for candidate moves and check captures and threats for your opponent. But let's see. Okay, he missed it. Okay. Okay, to both attack the f pawn and okay, the attack on the king makes sense. Okay, defending. So let's see, rook e1. They offer to trade queens. First of all, I think you should be kind of happy to see the offer to trade queens because I think you can just trade and start picking up pawns. I guess they pick up a2 too, but that's not such a big deal. I think your rook's getting in. But secondly, the knight's just hanging, and I think you both totally missed that. So, okay, you look for candidate moves. You look for queen takes queen. You look for rook takes pawn. I think you just totally missed rook takes knight. Or, sorry, queen takes knight. Because the knight's just hanging, and you both just missed it. That's okay, though. You're trying to go through the process. So it's not like you just played too quickly. You just kind of didn't see it. That's okay. That happens. Takes. You win a pawn. Okay, they don't grab a2 right away, letting you take f7. Okay, could we be greedy here? Take h7. Trying to see if rook e7, you couldn't prevent rook d1. What do you mean? Prevent rook d1? I think we just take it, right? I don't think black can play that, but let's see. Okay, they grab your pawn, you defend. Okay, now we're just playing this pure rook-in game. Except the rooks are really, really active here on the second rank, of course. So let's see. So takes, and now it's going to be trouble, right? Oh, but you just blundered into mate in 1. But okay, you're down to 2 minutes. I understand. Like you said, you were kind of feeling rushed. You were really trying every turn to do this calculation and this thought process, which is really good. And you kind of ran into time trouble and blundered mate in 1. I think what I want you to focus on is blunder checking. I like what you're doing for looking for your candidate moves, but it's even more important to look for your opponent's candidate moves. Right? So in this moment, between the time when you decide on your move and actually when you play it on the board, that's the moment when you have to look for all your opponent's checks, captures, threats. Not before. Before, when you're looking for your own candidate moves, that's good. It's good to do that to decide on the best one. It's 10 times more important after you decide on the best move, after you're about to play it on the board, to blunder check and then look for your opponent's checks, captures, and threats. Because I think you would have seen rook h1, even with 2 minutes on your clock. I mean, you have a 45-second increment. So every single turn you have at least 45 seconds. So I think even with 2 minutes you would have caught this and not blundered the mate in one, even if you were in time trouble, if you were doing this blunder check step between deciding on the move and actually playing the move. There's different nuances we can get into. I don't think the rook endgame was played perfectly by any means, but I think this is the number one takeaway I want you to get. I think that's going to help you a lot. Like I said, you're already doing some of the process right. You're looking for candidate moves. Just do it for your opponent, from their perspective, between deciding on your move and making the move, and that's really going to cut down on your blunders. Next up, you have a game here from Mike S. So let's take a look. You've got the white pieces here, another member versus member game. Okay. Okay, so let me see what you said here. Also consider e5. e5 is the main move. Bishop d2 does nothing to protect c3. Yeah, it does. I mean, it defends it, but I think e4 is the problem, right? Now, some people play this way. Some people play bishop d2 and say, okay, black, if you want to give away your strong bishop to win the e4 pawn, you can do it. It's kind of like a gambit. But if you're not prepared to play that gambit, then certainly it's kind of a tactical mistake, right? e4 is just not defended. So, yeah, e5 is a move, e takes d5 is a move, although I don't like it. There's many ways to play, but e5 is the most normal continuation. And again, you can check out my video if you want more info on the opening. Just Google like chess pathways French defense on YouTube, and you'll be able to watch a video there. But okay, let's take a look. Bishop d2, knight f6, now e5, sure. Okay, I think I prefer playing f4 here. Just because, here's the thing, we have to anticipate what our opponent's going to do, right? We know that black wants to play c5 in this pawn structure, right? This is the advanced French pawn structure. I cover it in Module 3. If you haven't watched Module 3 yet, that's fine, but this is pretty standard. Black wants to play c5, and because we can't play c3, because we have a knight on c3, we have to be careful that our pawn chain doesn't get torn away. So that's why I want the pawn on f4 here, kind of stabilizing e5. But okay, knight f3 makes sense too. h6 kind of feels like it doesn't do too much. I'm not sure why h6. I think black should play c5 right away. Bishop b3, c5. Okay, you didn't anticipate c5. Well, that's not good because we know black has to play c5. I think c5 is the only move black can even consider playing here. But that's okay. Like I said, if you haven't been through Module 3 yet, maybe you wouldn't have known that. Definitely, you should be focusing on Module 2. By and large, so I'm not telling you to rush ahead. But I think even if you're still focusing on all the Module 2 stuff, doing calculation every day, tactics trainers, checks, captures, threats, that's all super important, keep doing it. But I would at least give the Module 3 videos kind of one watch through, just in, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour, just to kind of understand some of these pawn structures a bit better, and it would help you anticipate moves like c5. Because black has to strike at your pawn chain. If they don't strike at your pawn chain, you just have this very, very comfortable space advantage. So black will almost always play c5 in this locked up center position. So they play c5, and let's see how you handle it. Okay, knight b5, interesting. Trying to target this weak d6 square, and I'm not sure about this reaction to take on d2, because now the dark squares are really weak. This is kind of a common theme in this bishop b4 line in the French. I thought that, well, I guess it's not so simple for black to play this. Maybe knight b5 is actually a pretty strong reaction. Yeah, the more I look at it, I really like knight b5. I think black probably should have played differently earlier. Again, you can look at, theory here in the French defense, but I don't want to get too much into it because there's, way bigger areas of things to work on here. But okay, they take, and now they are really weak on the dark squares. So let's take a look. So black castles, they want to avoid knight d6 check, of course. And you're saying you're not sure what your hurry to castle was. Were you black in this game? No, you were white. Oh, I see what you're saying. You castled this turn. So let me see. You're not sure what your hurry to castle was. Yeah, I agree with playing c3 because, like I said, you want to maintain this pawn chain. If you allow black to take on d4, then e5 can become a target and you don't have this pawn chain anymore. Now, by and large, I don't mind being in a rush to castle. I think that's generally a good thing. The thing to understand is in these locked center positions, a lot of those classical opening principles aren't as important as you might think they are. A lot of those principles, develop as fast as you can, castle early, they apply more to open center positions. When the center's locked up, development doesn't quite mean as much. It's very hard for the pieces to do too much, and it becomes much more important to understand these long-term positional ideas like pawn chains and stuff like that. But okay, castle. a6. I think they're just helping your knight go to where it wants to go. Okay, c takes d4. And yeah, now it's kind of annoying we can't take back. And I don't like queen b4 because we're just asking black to play what they want to play, right? Knight c6. And okay, you missed it. That's understandable. Again, I think a lot of people do a good job at looking for checks, captures, threats that they can play. But just like I was talking to Mike B about just the previous game, it's even more important that between deciding on your move and actually playing it to look for all your opponent's checks, captures, and threats. Because I guarantee you, if you were black here, you would play knight c6 every time very quickly. It's a very, very easy move to find. The only reason you wouldn't find it with white is if you're not doing that kind of blunder check process. But that's okay, just something to work on. So let's take a look. Okay, and now you give away the e5 pawn, right? I thought you had to come back to e1 to defend e5. Let me see here. So I think you might have been a bit flustered after seeing knight c6. Just based on how you're talking here, which is understandable, but again, you don't want to get flustered. You still have to kind of dig in and find the best move. I think you have to play the queen back to e1 to try to defend this e5 pawn. But let's see. So queen d2, they take, and we have to watch out for this d6 knight too, which is, I mean, it's essentially trapped. I guess we have knight takes c8 at least. But let's see. Takes. Okay, we wiggle out of that, to some degree or another. Black has lots of central pawns, and we're down 2 pawns. Let's see if we can recover from this. Take advantage of your queen, bishop, rook on the queen side to advance the pawns. Okay, all right, let's see how it goes. It's kind of hard here because black controls the full center, but let's see how the rest of the game goes. Black starts advancing these pawns. Okay. Following with a4 and b5. Okay, I mean, trying to make something happen. But black's just going to overwhelm us with these central pawns, I think. Okay, takes. Okay, here comes f5. Rook b to d1. Okay, yeah, you saw d4 unprotected, kind of trying to target this potentially weak pawn. Good. Okay, coming back to the b file since it might open up. Hold on, let me read this long comment. You considered moving the bishop and queen to h5 or g4 to think about getting a piece around and behind black's defense. No, I mean, if black plays right, black should win, right? There's no way to force, like, some attack that's just gonna work. Black just has way too good of central control. You're really just kind of hoping to make something happen and hope that black makes a mistake at some point, but black should definitely win if black's careful here. Also on rook b1, I think black should probably just play c4 here, just kind of, like, make this rook not so effective here and keep marching the pawns forward, and then they could play d3 next turn, and then I think it's pretty clear that black is just totally winning. But okay, before they played c4, they played f4 first. Actually, that's also pretty scary. They're threatening f3, right? So f3, okay, you said it might have been better to play b takes c5. I kind of agree with that. Just trying to, like I said, get something going, at least open a file and hope to make something happen. So I think I agree with that. Yeah, make a dent in the mass of pawns. But let's see. So f3, e3, takes. At least now we can try to target this d4 pawn. It's kind of hard to defend now. Okay, rook b3. I don't know about a4. I don't think this pawn's too important. I'd be happy if we could lose this pawn, but, like, take this pawn with doubled rooks or something. Like, just play, I don't know. It takes a while, that's the problem. But if we can eventually double on the d file and grab the d pawn, because then we can target f4, we can target d5, we're tearing down black's massive pawns here in the center. I'm not as worried about a black passed a pawn. It's just kind of far away from queening, and we're dealing with the bigger threat. But let's see, rook b3, I don't mind that. It defends the pawn, threatens to possibly double on the d-file. Let's see how it goes. Okay, good. I like that you don't take right away and fix the pawns. That's very important. So queen d3. Okay, don't mind that. Okay. Oh, why that? Don't we win a pawn if we take with the rook? Let me see. You regret not taking on d3 with the rook. Yeah, it definitely would have been a better move, and you're not sure why you played c takes d3. Oh, I see. You want this rook on, like, the open file. Yeah, there's some logic to that. I just think it's, like I said, more important to target this big mass of central pawns. But okay, let's see how the game goes. Maybe we still have some hope if we can just, like, guard this pawn with the king, and I guess our rook is on an open file. We can try to penetrate or something. Well, we can't play that defensively in a rook game. Let me see your comment there. Oh, no comment. Oh, I see. We can't even get in because they're threatening checkmate. So I guess we'd have to play king f1 here, maybe? I think we have to keep the rook active. We have to like play king f1, guard with the king, and still try to penetrate. Because if we just play passively, black's just going to march the king, and it should be a loss. The rook has to play a more active role, even though it's not easy. I think objectively it's probably just lost. Yeah, black can play rook c2. They can play rook c3, and there shouldn't be a way to save this. Yeah, like you said, it seemed hopeless. But let's see how the rest of the game goes. Okay, yeah, and these pawns are just gonna win. Okay. All right, yeah, so I hope that helps. And I really like the depth of your annotations here. That really helped me kind of see how you think. I think the biggest things to work on are, well, number one, I think it would help to kind of review the Module 3 material, even if you're still focusing on Module 2, just like I said, just to be exposed to some of these positional ideas. But then I think blunder checking is going to be a big thing for a lot of people to work on. Not just you, but I think this is hopefully going to help a lot of the people in this program watching this game. Remember that checks, captures, and threats and the whole framework, that's not only useful for coming up with your candidate moves, it's even more important, like I'm harping on, this instant between deciding on your move and actually playing it, when you have to look for all of your opponent's possible checks, captures, and threats, and triple check that your move is safe. But good job, keep it up, keep the games coming. Next up, let's take a look at a game here from Peter. So let's flip this around. You've got the black pieces. Okay. So I've noticed this in your game against me too. In your game against me, you blocked in the dark bishop when you didn't have to, and you're doing it again here. So let me see. You're super scared of knight g5. Oh, I see. You're talking about before knight c3. But here, this is known to be not so great for white to play kind of the four knights hybrid with the Italian. Black has two good answers here. You can play bishop b4, and already your bishop is kind of better placed than white's. They never get any pressure on f7 anymore. We can always castle. And we're threatening to do the whole remove the defender thing that white has to watch out for. Or we go for the center fork trick. Knight takes e4, and d5, and we get our piece back, and we wipe out white's only central pawn. So d6, I mean, it might be okay, I just don't really see the motivation to lock in our bishop. And I think now, do we have to worry about knight g5 again? What happens on knight g5 here? I feel like white gets an even better version of the fried liver kind of setup, because again, we have to play d5, but we just played d6. So what do we do? It doesn't seem so great for black. So I think we gave white a big opportunity here by playing d6. Everyone here plays either bishop b4 or knight takes e4, I believe. That's kind of the refutation. Not really a refutation, because white's more or less fine, but I think black's fine too, to this kind of four knights Italian hybrid. But okay, white does nothing. I guess that's nice of them. Bishop e7, d4, takes, castle, this all looks fine. Okay, don't mind that. Takes, and bishop e6. Yeah, I don't mind that idea. I guess if they take, we get to get some more pawns in the center, open up the f-file for our rook. That said, I feel like white has some pretty decent centralization here. They're probably going to castle long and possibly try to attack us. But let's see. So, okay, they play bishop b3, rook e8. Okay, alright, let me just see here. You did not even know, he has not castled yet. Your goal is getting rid of the white squared bishop, but you like your knight on f4. Okay, I guess we'll see how it goes. Okay, they do castle short. And knight h5. I see, that's your idea. You want the knight coming to f4. I just don't know if it can stay there unless you're going to play like g5 to support it. Sorry, not that. g5. But let's take a look. So, okay, I don't think I agree with that. I think white should probably exchange, because now we get to kind of, take, and all their pawns are here on the side of the board. I know they get the open f-file, but it's not worth it. Or is bishop f6 even stronger? Let's see. You noticed you went a pawn here. So they have to move the queen away, and now we take, and now we take, and now we take, and now we take. Okay, nice combination. Does white have to allow that, though? After bishop f6, they can just defend their e-pawn, right? I think it's only a mistake to come all the way back, because then our little combination here works, where we exchange everything, and this pawn falls. I think white could have played queen d3, and then we don't win a pawn. Still kind of a nice in-between move, and then we can still just take here. Although then if we take... I was going to say the queen could take and avoid the doubled pawns, but then I guess we still take, huh? Either way, nice combination in the end. Trade off 3 pieces and win the pawn. Not a bad way to go. So we defend, we triple, good, although we do lose the a-pawn. Is that really worth it? Let me see. Yeah, I think we kind of got excited to triple. I did too when I first saw the move in that first millisecond. But yeah, I don't think we want to give up the a-pawn. So let's see. So, okay, they take a7. So okay, now we trade their G pawn for our B pawn. Not sure if that's great. Hard to kind of assess what's going on here. Both sides have a lot of activity, but I'm worried because C7 might fall too, and White's getting a lot of pressure here on our 7th rank. We can try to put pressure on G2 as well. There's just a lot to calculate here. So let's see. Queen takes C7. So first of all, what happens if we go to the rook in game? Because we have to assess both options, right? So if we do make the exchange, and we go for something like this, I don't think they can take here because we take with check. I guess the problem is they're just going to play something like this, and I don't really think this is so great for us. White has the only passed pawn, and White's up a pawn, and there's no more like immediate threats we can make. So that seems concerning. So okay, you decide not to go for the rook in game. You give this check. Oops, let me go back. Queen e3 check. Does that work? Rook takes h3. I guess we have a perpetual, right? Which I guess you're probably happy with at this point. Do we have better than a perpetual check? So takes. Okay, you don't want the perpetual. You have a draw with like takes and checks, right? But okay, instead you give this check and this check. Check, check. Okay, and you're happy with the draw. I guess that's why you give it 2 exclamations. Yeah, I guess if you're happy with the draw, it makes sense. And I think you probably should be, because the alternatives look pretty bad. But in the end, I think you won, so what did White do wrong? You're just trying to make a draw and give checks, I think. Check, 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 check. Oh, and eventually they blunder into checkmate. Yeah, I think White didn't have to do that. But nice find there with the rook takes h3, kind of trying to turn things around once White got all this pressure, and capitalizing on their blunder. Nice win in the end. Next up, we got a couple games here from Gerrome, so let's take a look. You've got White here. Okay. That's not such a typical way for Black to play this gambit, but it looks like you're up a pawn for the time being. Wow, okay, I really disagree with this. So Black played like a6, b5 to put pressure on your center, and then at the first opportunity they give up all the pressure. So, okay, we have an extra healthy pawn here. That's good. I'd play d4. You want to control the center. You want to open up lines. But let's see. You played bishop e2. What is Black doing? Castle, a4. Yeah, but what's the big deal? You just defend the pawn somehow. So you take... I guess we can do that too, right? Why not? Although I guess then Black can like win this pawn back and it's kind of annoying. I think I would probably just play bishop b2 and defend the rook. I know they can play a3, but I don't care. I'll come right back. And again, you have no pressure anymore. Now I'm just going to play d4. So okay, b takes a4. They're going to come after that guy. Bishop b2 takes... Are we just giving up the d3 pawn? Let me see. For freeing up the d2 square for the undeveloped knight to use later. Yeah, I'm not sure why it took this long to move the d-pawn. I felt like we want to get this bishop in the game a lot sooner. I know it's in the game now, but we kind of gave Black a lot of undeserved time there. They wasted so much time playing like a6, b5, b4, a5, a4. I feel like we should be crushing them in the center by then if they're going to play that way. But okay, so takes... Okay, b4 hangs. That is certainly relevant. Okay, but they get this tempo, and now they can take on c4. Knight c3 with tempo. Well, no, it's not really with tempo, because the bishop's defended, right? So you prioritize development over capturing the c-pawn. Yeah, like you said, sounds kind of like a tunnel vision kind of situation, because I like how you're thinking about prioritizing development, but you had your chance to do that. You kind of didn't, wipe Black out in the center like you could have, and now I think it's time to grab your free pawn and be happy with your pawn advantage. Wow, okay. Yeah, this is a pretty crazy game. Okay, so they pin you, a3, back. Yeah, so both sides are completely uninterested in material here. Yeah, so queen c1. So not only are you missing a free pawn, aren't you giving Black a free pawn? I don't get it. Yeah, I mean, it happens. It sounds like you said, you kind of feel silly looking back on it now. Yeah, I think like you said, it's kind of a tunnel vision kind of thing. So I'm kind of curious what the time control is, if you're looking for all the checks, captures, threats every turn. It says blitz, but it says 30 minutes, so I'm kind of confused. But let's take a look. So, okay, they do grab their pawn. Now, Black is suddenly up material, which is kind of hard to believe. We grab the bishop. Don't they have a tempo here on our rook? Okay, rook e1. Well, I mean, there's a bishop. takes, and takes. So that was not good. Queen takes c2. And what's the situation here? We're down a full rook, right? So we should just lose. I'm trying to see if you had any comments here. Yeah, I mean, you make a big blunder after that, but it's already very hard to play. We just gave black a strong protected, or not a protected pass pawn, but a strong pass pawn on d3 for no real reason. And then, yeah, going for this, of course, is a blunder. Again, I think it comes down to not having that tunnel vision. I think you put it in your own words there really well. Again, blunder checking every turn. Really looking for all your opponent's possible checks, captures, threats every turn. Not sure if you have time to do that based on the time control of this game, but it's definitely a big thing that would help you out. Okay, so we go for this. We're down a rook. Is there any way to turn this around? Let's see. Oh, they blunder a knight. That is helpful. Do they have any way to avoid this? Yeah, like, why are they playing a move like rook e4 when they can just castle, right? I think black should just castle. But okay, check. They blunder a knight. Good. Still down the exchange, but that's a lot more manageable than being down a rook. Do we have to exchange queens? I don't really love doing that when we're down the exchange. I'm trying to read your comments here. You did this to encourage the exchange of queens. So why do you want to exchange queens, is the question. Because usually when you're down material, you don't want to play the endgame, right? And then you've calculated this line too? Well, I mean, that looks good for you if he goes for that, but he's not going to go for that, right? Why would they play? Oh, I see. You're hoping they'll blunder into this kind of deflection thing where they try to deflect the rook away and forget you'll take with the knight. Yeah, but black shouldn't blunder like that, of course. But let's see. So you do trade queens. The problem is these rooks are so strong in the endgame. Okay, check. Okay. I like how you're thinking, trying to activate the king, but the rooks are so strong you can't really defend your pawns. I'm just trying to see if there's any way to turn this around. Okay, black's making this look really hard. Okay, nice job. The knights are tricky in the endgame, especially in shorter time controls. So okay, black gives you a gift. I think there's not too much value in really analyzing what happened there, because it's just that black blundered, but I think this will be interesting, actually looking at this rook in game. It's kind of nice that black made the game interesting and gave us something to analyze. So now let's see what happens in this rook in game. I'm kind of curious to check the result. So you fought back for a draw. Okay, yeah, this should be a draw, I think, but let's just see. Okay. Yeah, this should be a pretty trivial draw, I think. I don't think either side can really do very much. So we're just going to shuffle. Okay, you really have to calculate that, by the way, if you're going to go to the king and pawn endgame. But I think it works out for you. And I guess you just calculated that you could go for this. And did you see they could win the pawn? I don't really see too much calculation here. Oh, I see. You made a comment up here. Yeah, if you can leave it with him stuck with the rook pawn, it should be a draw. So let's just see. Okay, yeah, this should be a pretty easy draw. Yep. Yeah, you don't even have to win the pawn. You can just, like, sit on your back rank. They can't win with the rook pawn. But yeah, nice job fighting back for a draw. Like you said, you just kind of hung around, you waited for black to blunder, you took advantage of it, and you fought back. Just that opening could have been a lot smoother, of course. Definitely replay that, play it against a computer, and really try to punish them for doing this ridiculous, a6, b5, b4, a5, a4 opening with the pawn sacrifice in the center. That's not a thing. But all right, you fought back and got your draw. Let's take a look at your other game here. Have the white pieces. Okay, they're playing this weird sideline. I don't love d3 here. I just feel like black's asking to be punished when they play queen f6, and this isn't really the way I would want to do it. To me, I think I'd play knight c3 here. I know it's not often what you do in the Ruy Lopez, but the fact that black has to immediately worry about knight d5 is kind of annoying for them. So I might play that. But okay, d3 is fine. Bishop c5, castle. Okay, this all looks fairly reasonable. Okay, and they're playing for this very fast attack on the king side. So g4, knight d2. It shouldn't really materialize into anything. Black doesn't have the development to play this way. But let's see what happens. Takes, h5. So this is 2 games in a row. You played someone who has no interest in doing anything but marching their flank pawns. The thing is, see, I'd love to play in the center somehow if black's going to do this, but we can't play d4 yet, which is kind of annoying. So you play knight b3. You fail to see his knight is also adding support to the e4 square. I don't know what you mean. Maybe you're talking about the d4 square. And you miss knight d5. Yeah, like I said, we have to play in the center somehow, and knight d5 is kind of the principled response with their queen so far from c7. Yeah, I like this, trying to blow open lines in the center. This is very principled. Black's playing on the wings, so we have to play in the center somehow. Bishop d7, rook d1. Okay, I guess you really want to play the d4 break, which is good. I just would have played it a lot sooner and not played d3 at all. But okay, d4 makes sense. Knight b4, takes, and rook d2, I guess just trying to double. I guess that makes sense with the king in the center. I'm just not sure if it's going to amount to too much, because there's no clear target on the d-file if the king evacuates, right? Like if we just take, and they take back and their king's not here, let's say the king's on b7, d6 isn't a target, there's no opening here on the d-file. But maybe you want to play knight d5 or something. We'll see how it goes. So h4, takes, okay. Yeah, this is how I'm feeling watching this. You're playing very generally with nothing concrete. Here it sort of feels like black is okay. I mean, we have equal material, their king is on d7, but, I mean, it seems like it's fairly safe there, actually. There's nothing much we can do to it. I'm just wondering how else we can maybe play in a position like this to be more concrete here. So b6, d4... I feel like there has to be something better than doubling on the d-file. I would try to look to start making actual threats. So we could start with like queen e2 here, right? At least threatening queen b5, winning, right? Because they can't play knight c6 because of d5. So black would have to deal with that. So let's say queen e2, what does black do here? Like if they play a6, now we could consider playing d5 and trapping the knight, I think, in some cases, because now they don't have a6 for the knight. I'm just worried that if we played d5 here, they'd respond with maybe a5, giving the knight a home. But even so, their light squares are so weak. They have all their pawns in dark squares, no light bishop. I would start looking into those light squares, seeing if we can exploit them somehow. I just feel like you said, you just kind of doubled and then kind of wondered what to do after that, and I don't think there's a very clear plan. Okay, so black's trying to break through. I don't think we should be too scared of this, but we do have to take it seriously, of course. So let's see. Oh, and you forgot that, like, f4 wasn't going to get hit with en passant. You just kind of forgot how en passant works for a second. Yeah, f4 is probably better than f3. I agree. So, okay, you use the pawn as a shelter. A little bit scarier with knights on the board, because the knight could route its way to g3, but I don't see black doing that in the near future. Or actually, what happens on knight f5? Isn't that kind of scary? Because they can play knight f5 here, right? Yeah, I think black's totally winning here after knight f5 the more I look at it. Because, what do? I mean, knight g3 is coming. But, okay, black misses it. Rook g8. Okay, now we play f4. Check. And takes. Okay. Let me see what you said here. You took a long time on the next move. I like how you're trying to justify your pieces, right? The rooks were kind of closed off on the d-file, so you look for a sacrifice to make it work. Certainly, if this works, it's good. Let's actually see how it plays out. So takes, check, and just coming back. Do we have enough here? Maybe the idea is like knight b5. That seems like the only clear follow-up I can see. I don't think we have enough, though. There's no way we have enough. Black can defend this. Let me see. You think we're playing hope chess, in the fear that if you were too passive, you'd miss out on some grand play. Yeah, I think we just can't play a move like this unless we're sure it works. Like I said, if it works, it's great. I like how you're trying to justify your pieces, but a rook's a rook, and if we're not actually doing anything here, we can't give away a rook. So let's see how black defends. Yeah, the follow-up can't be rook back to d2. But then again, what else? We have to defend g2, so I just don't think it works. Let's see, rook d8. They trade off rooks. Okay. Check. Knight d5. Whoa, that looks... Why is black being this greedy? They're up a whole rook, and they're trying to grab this b2 pawn instead of defending their king. Yeah, black has any number of wins here. I think even queen g3 is probably just winning. But, okay, they take a pawn, they're super greedy, and they let us do this to them. And are they in this unescapable mating net, or can they do anything about this? We have knight c4 if they try to walk out, which looks like it's what happens. So, okay. Yeah, nice comeback. Nice job. Yeah, I hope that tactical advice is going to help you. I like how good you are at diagnosing some of this stuff after the game, admitting when you're playing kind of generally and you have no plan, admitting when you miss free pawns and you kind of missed a blunder check. Just really work on being consistent during the game. Really blunder checking every turn. Forcing yourself to be concrete, not just playing a move like rook takes d6 based on, like you said, hope chess. and keep it up. All right, next up we got a game here from Tom. Against Seth, nice member versus member game. So let's take a look. Looks like we get a long main line here of the Gerrome to start the game. Black chooses the bishop d6 line instead of bishop e7. Not as familiar with that. You mentioned knight f5. I don't think that's going to work because they just have e takes f5, right? But okay, knight e4, that's much better. Okay, you're going for this whole kingside attack kind of setup. Rook e8, queen d3. I'm not sure why queen d3. You give up with no comment, and now c5. This allows you to open lines for the pieces and start to attack black's king. I mean, black has to do something in the center, right? So for Seth, I think I have advice here for Seth. So I think usually you don't want to play bishop d6 when you want to castle short. Usually, you have the bishop on e7. And now if white tries to do the same thing here, you have some defensive ideas. For example, knight e4. Now you would just take, play knight f6, and then you have queen d5 in a lot of these cases. For example, queen d5, thinking about queen e4, trying to exchange queens. It seems like white's attack is just kind of automatic and very dangerous if you don't have some of these defensive ideas. Usually when people play bishop d6, they do it to castle long. But let's take a look. Yeah, the attack seems pretty pretty scary here for white, so let's just see how it goes. Okay, yeah, we just get this tempo, takes. Okay. And you said that he resigned too early here. I'm not sure, though, because this looks pretty crushing. I guess maybe you would have liked to kind of have to find the finish. But certainly black seems lost to me. Yeah, I mean, good game. I've certainly been the recipient of this kind of attack in the Gerrome as black many times, so I understand how it goes. It's kind of frustrating how, after a certain point, it feels like white kind of gets to make these automatic moves, and black has to be super accurate every turn. So maybe Seth had some ways to kind of mitigate this attack. I think the easiest one is just having that queen d5 resources available there kind of earlier on. Next up, we got a game here from David with the black pieces, another member versus member game. So let's flip this around. Okay. You said you've been playing e4, so this should be interesting and unknown. Well, even if you play e4 with white, certainly you're going to have plenty of people who play d4 against you. So I'm not sure if you're saying you're already kind of unfamiliar here on move 1, but let's take a look. Okay, so I've talked about this in the past, but I'll kind of refresh it here. Usually in queen's pawn openings, we don't want to block in the c-pawn, just because this pawn is very helpful in fighting for the center. The thing is, it's very hard to get the e-pawn involved in a queen's pawn opening, just because, it's very hard to ever break with e4 or e5 early on. So very often, we want to put this pawn either on c6 or c5. There's nothing quite wrong with this. It's just very easy to have no plan in the middle game if we have this knight on c6 and there's no involvement from either central pawn. So let's see. Okay, I don't mind this. The thing is here, we have to watch out for queen b3, going after b7 and d5. We have to watch out for white wiping out our center. What I would recommend, like the advice I've given to others in this video, it's totally okay not to know an opening. It's totally okay not to even focus on openings right now while you still focus on tactics and positional play. But you should try to learn one new thing from every game. So, okay, you kind of got surprised with this queen's pawn opening. What I would recommend is just, like I've said, go on YouTube. I'll just put it in a comment here, comment after. Just search for queen's pawn game chess pathways. And just watch the video, just to get some familiarity with how some of these lines work. Or even look for my video on the Queen's Gambit, if you want to play d5 specifically. Because usually, if you flip this around, when white puts pressure on our central d-pawn, we can't just defend it with a piece. Because if we do, they're going to wipe out our center. Like here, white could play c takes d5, we have no pawn presence in the center, and white just has this nice space advantage. But okay, let's see how it goes. Okay, good, defending with the pawn. That's what you want, because now if white takes back, you can maintain your pawn in the center. Again, I'd still be worried about queen b3, but okay, white just wants to play a3. Okay, we're going back and forth. I don't get it. Avoid f3, well, then we probably shouldn't go there in the first place if you're so worried about f3. But if white wants to play f3, we can just go back after that. We don't have to go back preemptively. And now you just got yourself forked. Yeah, again, just this is kind of a general thought, right? Bust open the center. That's not calculation. That's just kind of like a general thought, which is fine. But again, you have to translate those thoughts into calculation. You can't just have a move pop in your head and then play it on the board. You have to actually, go through the calculation process. So yeah, let's see how this goes. You're going to be down a piece, but let's see if you can fight back at all. Okay, not sure why white won't just trade queens if they're up a whole piece, but okay. Trying to avoid trades. I don't mind that. We have to fight back somehow. Okay, the rooks come off, and white should win this pretty easily. Okay, yeah, so we got in a little opening trouble. I don't mind the opening stuff too much. We really lost the game because we blundered the piece, right? That's what it all came down to. The whole game could be distilled into that one move, right? I don't think any other move in this game really mattered besides knight takes e5, right? The rest was just, okay, white's up a piece, white trades everything off, and white wins the endgame. So no worries, definitely keep focused on the tactics. That's where your biggest opportunity lies. But it is nice to learn one new thing about openings every game. So definitely check out some of those videos, and you'll be better prepared next time you see d4, d5. That's kind of how incremental progress there, as far as openings, is kind of best achieved at this level. Next up, let's take a look at that Daniel played against me. Just as a reminder, if you play a daily game against me and you want it in a video, definitely annotate it and send it to me if you want to guarantee it. Or if you type your chat, if you type your thoughts in the chat menu throughout the game, and I have a good idea of how you were thinking, there is a chance I'll choose to include it too, especially if I think there's some good lessons to be learned. And this was a very interesting one. So let's take a look. You have the black pieces. I'll do it here from your perspective. We get this Sicilian line here. We kind of get back into a Najdorf. And we talked a bit about the move order here in the opening. So if you want to play the Najdorf with a6, d6, e6, I think I would recommend this move order. With d6 first. Here it's kind of about what sideline you want to avoid, right? If you play d6 first, the white has the choice to play bishop b5, you have to be ready for that. If you play e6 first, bishop b5 makes no sense, of course, it's just kind of a free tempo, if nothing else. But here, some players choose to play g3 and go for this King's Indian attack, or kind of closed Sicilian kind of setup after black is committed that they don't have bishop g4, and this bishop's going to be kind of locked in for the time being. But going back to what I was saying, if you want to play the Najdorf, I think I'd recommend d6, and then on d4, takes, knight f6 right away, just to make sure that white has to play knight c3, they can't play c4. Now white could play like f3 here right away. They could go for this, and you have to know some stuff there. I think that's called the Prinz variation. So if they play f3, I think then black plays e5, and then knight b3 and bishop e6, and black can even go for an early d5 break in some cases, not all, just some. That's one reason I kind of prefer delaying this move e6. There are some cases where you might prefer the pawn on e5. If you want to play the Najdorf, of course. This is all kind of predicated on the fact that you want to play like the whole e6, d6, a6 kind of setup. But after knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and then a6, and then again, you can decide if you want the pawn on e6 or e5 based on what white does. But okay, in the game, we get this Najdorf position. I'm going for the English attack kind of setup with bishop e3. f3, b5, queen d2, knight b to d7. This all makes sense. g4. You were kind of critical of some of your moves here, but I think they're all fine. This is all kind of mainline stuff. And now, yeah, black has to make a choice if they're going to allow g5 or not. You chose not to, which is fine. A lot of people do play h6 here in this e6 line. The downside, like I said, you can never really castle short if you're going to do this. If white castles long, because the attack is just so strong, there's this, we call it a hook, right, that opens up all the lines. But okay, castle long, bishop e7, this is all totally normal. h4, b4, knight a4. And now, d5 is a line. This is positionally desirable for black, to break open the center like this. Black has this 2 against 1 in the center, and you finally expands and break down some of these lines. The thing is, it's very dangerous because your king is stuck in the center. So the main line, there's a whole main line here. I think black usually plays queen a5, going after the knight and the a2 pawn, b3, knight c5, and now white has to know this in-between move with a3, threatening a takes b4 against this pinned pawn, so that white can meet knight takes a4 with a takes b4 before recapturing the piece. And then I think it's like queen c7, pawn takes a4, white wins a pawn, but their king is super exposed. I think here, is this the moment where black plays d5? I think it might be. d5, but white has e5, you can't take because your queen gets trapped. So now it's like knight d7, f4, knight b6, and there's a whole lot of theory here. If this scares you, then this is how the Sicilian is. A lot of these Najdorf lines are super, super sharp, with big attacks for both sides and lots of complex ideas, which I think is cool. And you don't have to fear that your opponent's going to memorize you to move 20, because no one's going to do that at the sub 2000 level. And they're definitely fun openings to play. I'm not saying don't play it, just be aware that this stuff exists. But okay, in the game you played d5, and white's main move against d5 here is bishop h3. The idea of bishop h3 is that white has to play a move like this to threaten to play g5. Obviously, if you play g5 now, you can't recapture with the pawn, because your rook's hanging. So, I mean, white could play this way and recapture with the bishop, but that's not really what white's going for. That doesn't really achieve too much, and black's gonna break down the center. So bishop h3, not only threatening g5, but also threatening g6, winning the e6 pawn. That's the whole idea. White wants to break down these lines around the king and get to the king. So d takes e4, g5. I'm pretty sure this is all still theory. Let's actually see how often this has been played. 7 times. Okay, not that much. I know this has been played quite a bit, bishop h3. I guess most people here go back to queen a5. Although, as you can see, white scores very, very well on this line. I think the main line with queen a5 is better. d5 so fast might be kind of a bit risky here, blowing the center open too early. But okay, takes, g5, and now knight d5. The problem is g6 just looks so strong. I think white's just close to winning here after g6, unless I'm missing something. Like, you can't even play f5 is the problem, because the knight takes e6, right? So you played f6, but now, yeah, knight takes e6, and I kind of finish it off nice here with this this knight c7 in-between move before recapturing, with the point being that now rook takes d7 as a threat, and the whole thing falls apart. So don't feel bad about this. I'm usually really happy when someone under 2,000 plays the Sicilian against me in a tournament, because it's just so hard for black if they don't know all the main lines and there's, all this memorization to move 15. It's such a complex opening, so don't feel bad at all that it kind of went wrong here. This is just kind of one of the things that comes with the territory of playing the Najdorf, that if you're not super well prepared for one of these main lines, it can be very, very dangerous. But yeah, that was a very exciting game. And now, last but not least, let's take a look at this game that I played against Manny. So I played the Polish opening, just trying to experiment and try new things. c6. I haven't really seen this response to the Polish before. Then again, I've barely seen the Polish, so we're kind of already in original territory. So let's see how this goes. So I like this, just developing, makes sense. If you're looking for other ways to play against the Polish, it's probably not even worth discussing because no one plays this. I've liked the German defense recently, where you play d5 and queen d6. This move kind of has a double attack. You're threatening the b-pawn, and you're also supporting e5, grabbing the full center. That's the point. And white can't even push this pawn like they often want to do because you have a fork. It's kind of a little fun trap. Plus, it's based on a sound principle of grabbing the center. Of course, there are some risks with the queen being here so early. Black should play here a3, not b5. And now I think it's like e5, and white can play knight f3. And, you have to worry about your center here a little bit. And white's going to play for like e3 and c4 and grab some space over here and strike at the center. Just one possibility. Or there's nothing wrong with just playing the normal way and just grabbing the pawn and playing like this. Here the logic is white is happy because they traded off their flank pawn for your central pawn, but black is happy because white has no lines for development, and black's going to get a big lead in development, and the full center. After knight f6, of course. But okay, let's see. So you play the triangle system with the bishop out. I start trying to do the whole typical stuff with the queen side pawn pushes that this opening is based around. This I thought was fine so far. d4 is kind of a big decision for me because I'm blunting the bishop a little bit. But I thought it was worth it at this point. You haven't really played e5 yet, and I thought you were maybe about to, so I just wanted to kind of increase my stake in the center there. I already have a ton of space here on the queen side. Now it's more of like a typical queen's pawn opening that we transposed into, where white has all this queenside space, and maybe black wants to play e5 someday, but it's not that easy. So knight e4. I chose to play c5 and take some of the pressure off the center just because I saw some potential here. These pawns are coming so fast. I really just wanted to play like, a5, a6 and tear everything down. So bishop e7, a5. And okay, you played f6. So this allowed knight h4, which I couldn't play last turn because the bishop's blocked in. I'm just trading off this strong bishop. I thought you were going to play a6. This is the move that I thought you maybe should play, because now what do? You kind of, you confront my big massive pawns and force me to make a decision. If I play b6, then I have a permanent space advantage, but I also permanently close the queen side, and it's not easy to, ever sacrifice on a6 and make my passed pawn, right? Now you can just really focus strictly on the king side, which you kind of want to do, right? Whereas if I take... Now, okay, you clarified the situation, you clarified the big advancing wall of pawns, now there's just an open b-file. Maybe this is good for me, because, a6 is maybe a bigger target than a5. And these two squares are super important. If either of us can route a piece into that square, that'd be good. It's just going to take me a while. Although I do have, like, maybe knight c3, knight a4, knight b6, possibly? Although when I play knight a4, a5 is hanging. So there's a lot to calculate. There's a lot that would kind of go into that decision. But I thought it was worth possibly considering. Because I feel like it's super dangerous to allow a6 and all your pawns kind of collapse if I ever play a6. But okay, f6, knight h4, I trade off. And I thought about playing a6 right away. I thought it might be better to kind of kick this knight back first and just kind of stay flexible. Here it's a bit harder maybe to consider a6 because I'm really fast coming to the b6 square in some cases. That was the thought. So king f7, just trying to evacuate the king and attack on the h-file, makes sense. But I do get to play a6, who never prevented it. And now white's going to get some favorable outcome here after a6, right? If you take on a6, I would take on c6 and make a passed pawn, and this pawn is surely going to fall, and this pawn's a target. That's the point. And if you take here, again, I think I'd play here first. And again, I make a passed pawn, the a-pawn's a permanent target, and white kind of got what they wanted when they advanced this giant wall of pawns. But you played rook h8, in between move threatening checkmate. I played f4, attacking the knight. Of course, it's not a real threat yet because of the checkmate threat, possibly. But here is where you made that mistake that we talked about during the game. You played f5, thinking you were secure, but you forgot that I can deflect your queen away from this diagonal. So a takes b7, and now, yeah, what do, right? Because I'm threatening the rook, I'm threatening b takes c6, the knight's hanging if the queen moves away, and yeah, that's kind of not good if you're going to lose the knight. And I think you asked how you could have foreseen that, and I think, again, it comes down to looking for your opponent's checks, captures, and threats. I think you just didn't quite visualize correctly what would have happened after these exchanges. I think you said in the game chat that you saw the exchanges were possible, you just forgot that it would draw the queen off of this diagonal. Just be kind of hyper-aware when a piece is hanging, but you're relying on some tactic to make it not hang, to make sure that holds, and that's consistent throughout any possible sequence of checks, captures, and threats. That's how I would kind of think about that. But okay, so you lose the knight, you take back. I think I didn't make such a great move here at some point. I played knight b5, and yeah, black should definitely take the chance to sack the exchange in exchange for a couple pawns. By point count, it's equal, right? A knight and 2 pawns for a rook, 5 points for 5. But certainly up a piece, I shouldn't allow these complications, and now I have to watch out for the king a little bit. And my big, pretty wall of pawns is gone. So we shuffle around a bit, I contest your b-file. Especially being up the exchange, I should always be contesting those open files. We talked about that in a Zoom call, I think, last month. How, when you're up the exchange, you kind of have the right to the files, because your opponent doesn't have enough major pieces to contest them. So, okay, you go after my weak pawn, and then we go for this kind of forcing combination. Oops, I hate when it does that. Let's go back a bit. We go for this forcing combination where you take the c5 pawn. I had calculated this when I was considering queen a6. So, okay, you take, check, takes, and I kind of assumed there had to be a checkmate here. I didn't calculate it out all the way. I just saw this position and saw that I was pretty sure it was winning, because you either have to trade queens, or if you avoid the exchange of queens, then I thought your king was in big trouble. Either way, it should be a win, but okay, you avoid the exchange, makes sense, but now it comes check, and h4, kind of a pretty finish. Yeah, so I think the game was lost when you lost the piece, as it usually is. You did a good job of trying to stay in it and fight back. Even towards the end, I had to be careful because my king is so exposed after I let you, make that nice exchange sacrifice. But very nice game overall. Alright, that wraps up another Master Mentorship video. Keep the annotated games coming. If you have any questions about your game or anyone else's game that I just analyzed, please let me know. And if you haven't signed up for the tournament yet, we are underway, but you can still get paired for round 2. I'll just give you a half-point buy for round 1. Just visit videos.chesspathways.com/members, and you can still sign up there. If you are in the tournament, of course, just a reminder, please make sure your first round game is done by December 15th. And on that date, I will get the second round pairings up. Thanks, and I look forward to seeing more games.